what? I'm healed. A bunch of good stuff is going on here. I'm healed.
I got it.
So, thanks. Okay, turn on.
Use me.
Testing, you hear me? Got a new cell phone here, is this cool? All right. I put some of my notes on here. I'm going to do a hodgepodge today. I just have to tell you that. I like to do hodgepodge. I just talk about things. I write down notes. And the reason I do that is sometime after 2002, my thought recall has been a little slower. And today especially because I got cut on with my knee on Monday, so I'm on hamburger helper, if you know what I mean. Actually, painkillers really don't kill pain. They don't. The pain's still there, I just don't know it's my leg. It's like, whose leg is that? Okay, let's talk, and I could just come up here because it's so good. I can just say what Wally said. There you go. See ya. But I'm going to say more. Do you see what this says? Perceptionomics. It's something I made up. Perceptionomics. What it really means is our perception becomes reality. And I assume I just click this. Now, we're not talking about factual necessarily on perception. Perceptionomics. Let me give you it says our perception of the economy is resulting in self-fulfilling prophecy. It always does. The economy has nothing to do with reality. And I'll tell you what, I can prove it. If you looked at the stock today for any given company, let's say Microsoft, it was up $4, an hour later down $3. I'm talking about on the stock day. Then it was up another 10, then it goes down 1, and it goes up another 150. You ever track a stock on a daily basis where it keeps going up, it keeps going down? Yet nothing happened that day. Nothing. But the perception was, I should buy, I should sell, I should buy, I should sell. And the price fluctuated all day. Companies don't change value that quickly. They don't change value that quickly. It was all done on perception. It's simply perception. And I can show you how the recession happens. There's a reason I'm telling you about perceptionomics, because today we've had many, many wonderful pieces of information regarding ourselves. And it was great information about burning desires, about dealing with ourselves. What I'm going to talk about is dealing with the outside world. I'm going to talk about manipulating. And by the way, I mean it. Because I believe if you manipulate people the right way, you help them. But you have to sometimes manipulate people. You can have all the inner desire and all the wonderful talent and all of the vehicles and all of the stuff going for you. But sometimes you need to influence others. And I'm going to talk about influencing others. And I'm not talking about, by the way, if there's any weirdos thinking about, I'm going to get a date now. We're not talking about dating. We're not talking about sex. God, sex is a terrible thing now. I don't want to, I just came into my mind. I told you hot fuzz. You know, it was so simple. Thank God, when I got divorced, 11 years ago, I found my wife Holly, and we found each other. I didn't have to date a lot. It's dangerous, you know, with the sex and all that. I mean, it is. It's dangerous. You have to keep track. Because when I suddenly realized I'm single, and it doesn't matter who you had sex with necessarily, it matters who they had sex with, and then it matters who they had sex with, and then it matters if one of those other people had sex with somebody dangerous. It's like freaking Amway. You got to keep track of your balance. agree, our perception of ourselves will always be accurate. Always. Our true perception. Not what we portray at a nightclub. I'm talking about your true perception of yourself inside will always be true. There's a reason I'm getting to this, because I want us to become perceptionomic prognosticators. Somebody said I could say that word on Viking. Okay. Prognosticators. Seriously, I'm not high, and I didn't take many pills. Okay. Perceptionomic prognosticators, foretellers, foreseeing the future. And there's ways to do it. Now, in addition to the relationship element and manipulating people, you also have to have proper timing. And it all comes into this. Let me give you an idea. Let me explain perceptionomics with an illustration. You could be on a highway that's backed up for 10 miles, and there could be all kinds of rescue equipment rushing to a scene, and there could be all kinds of confusion in the highway system. And everyone thinks it's a major deal. So when they get up to it, they have to make sure they look. And they see it's nothing, so they drive on, but they look. And then when you look, and you look, and you look, and you look, it causes a log jam. And then it becomes a major traffic jam. But it's not because of a major accident. It's because of nothing. Nothing caused it, except our perception. Our perception was something's happening. We have to slow down a little. And that's what happens in the economy. You know, when you hear a little bad news, like the fiscal cliff. I wish the newscasters jumped off that cliff. The fiscal cliff. Now listen to this. They said we were going to go off the fiscal cliff. And before that, it was something else. Before that, it was something else. But when something happens like that, you may want a home improvement, but you say, honey, let's just wait a few months. You may want a car. Let's just wait to see what happens first. You may want to take a vacation. You may want to do something like have a party. It doesn't matter. Little tiny pauses, little tiny decisions like that have a giant log jam in the economy. And all of a sudden, our perception becomes reality. But if we know it's happening, we can stay ahead of the game. So I look at it like this, the market. Know when to do what. Like I said, I don't want to take away from anything we have here today, because you have to work from inside out. And so many of us need basic tools. But then what? Then you have to interact with your world, or all those skills don't do much. And in order to do it, you have to read it. You have to know when is a good time, and you have to know when is a bad time. And if it's a good time, you got to plan. Well, it's easy to plan. Wally talked about the need for plans, or the need for roadmaps. We're all going to talk about that. Then what do I mean by gather? You have to gather the right kind of people around you and resources. And I should have put gather and dispose, because you also have to dispose of certain relationships. You know, there are friends that I've had that I've tried to help, and I've tried to talk to, and I've tried to reason with, or people that are always having problems with someone. And I had one guy that had like 16 jobs, and it was always that freaking boss. And I said, all of this, what's the common denominator? I'm trying to get to him. And he said, it's freaking bosses. He didn't get it. We have to be willing to self-examine ourselves, but also examine others. And sometimes you have to shed friends if you can't help them. You have to shed negativity. And you have to shed, even sometimes, your adult children who are going off to a terrible, terrible place. You have to help as much as you can, but I'll tell you, these things will drag you down. And at some point, you have to move forward. Then, when you get the right people around you, you have to time your actions. Because you're just reading what's happening, but you have to know how to time your actions. And this is the most important part of wealth building. And I'll tell you about me in a second, because wealth building is something I did well, and losing it was also something I did well. Conversion. Do you know there is no wealth without conversion? Let me give you an example. If you buy something that goes up in value, like a piece of art, and it hangs on your wall, it's not money, it's equity. When you sell it, it becomes money. So you have to concentrate on two things in our business life: cash flow and equity. You need both. But the only way to build wealth is knowing when to convert them. For example, cash flow is money coming in. I have great cash flow. My equity went out the window, but I had great cash flow. So now I want in my life to turn that cash flow into something more solid. And I went into real estate. You can go into precious metals. You can do anything. Because when you start making cash flow, and that's the purpose of business, to help you get to a mindset where you're going to start making cash flow. What you need to do is learn the proper ways to convert and when to convert to equity. And you let your equity grow. But if you have a lot of expensive art or jewelry, and you want to start a business, or you want to turn it into cash flow, you're going to have to invest in your business and therefore convert some of that equity to cash flow. Then when you get a lot of cash flow, you convert some of it back to equity. And that conversion separates the rich from the poor. Because there are many people who get instant cash flow with the lottery. And in 3 years, 90% of them are broke, and sometimes more broke than they were before they won the lottery. So those are basic tools there, and we'll talk about that. But we also have to accept breathing. We breathe in and we breathe out, and so does the economy. So I want to tell you what happens with the economy. It's inevitable. Every time, it'll always happen. It'll never stop happening. Sometimes the inflation is very, very high and the recession is very low. But when things are good, from perception, has nothing to do with reality, higher prices happen. Why? Because so many people want to buy computers and houses and trucks and cars and art. And what happens? Well, they have to raise prices a bit. And then what happens? Inflation. Okay, well, inflation happens. People now have to ask for more money, more wages, right? And the businesses have to pay out more to get more. They start competing for workers, and what you have is you have the good times, and then all of a sudden, when people are in a good cycle and things get tight, the businesses have to start paying more, and people become employed, and everything's doing wonderful. What happens is something in perception would cause less spending. Sometimes it's a mere inflation because things get so expensive. People say, I'm just going to wait. I should have bought a house 3 years ago or 5 years ago. I may wait. That pause I told you about. And then what happens is there's a less spending. But it's only a tiny bit for each of us. And it becomes a major deal where companies now have to start cutting back. And they start laying people off. And they start cutting back. People who are laid off now can't buy things. And it's a chain reaction, and then we're back to a recession. In a recession, people want to work. So they start offering their services cheaper. Businesses start offering stuff at lower prices. People want to stimulate business, and then people start buying again. And when people start buying again, we think things are good. and then prices go higher, and then we have inflation. It's an absolute cycle. The only way it would ever stop is if we said, I'm satisfied making whatever, take a salary, $15,000 a year, and I'll never want more for this job. And then everyone who buys the product will buy it for the same price. And my corporation won't expect more profits. Do you know, we are surrounded by very intelligent people in the economy, but we're really stupid because companies say for the same product and the same labor and the same everything, they want to increase profits this year by 20%. Why? Because people want more profit. Okay? Now, to increase 20%, it starts an entire chain reaction because we all want more. And all it does is this. That's all it does. And then it all comes back down. In between, there might be some inequity, but that's all it is. We want more. We want to be paid more so we can buy more. Our company pays us more, has to charge more. We go out and now pay more. Spending slows down. Now our companies cut back. And now fewer people are buying, and it starts all over again. We have to know that it's not reality. The only reality is the one you create and the people you manipulate. I'm not talking about negative manipulation to hurt people or Amway sex. None of that. Now let me tell you my story. I started out as a wealthy young lad. My dad was kind of a gangster, and we had big houses, boats, and stuff, till I was about 5 or 6. My dad was just one of those people that he didn't do things above board. In fact, so I got used to living a certain way, and I think my father did get into a legitimate business one time. I think he went through the skylight. The point is that I was surrounded by a very conservative mother and a father who did things the wrong way to gain wealth quickly. And what's funny is I watched my mom suffer from mental illness because, and I'm just looking up some miscellaneous notes here, and my mom suffered from mental illness because my dad was cheating, and he had all kinds of women, and so she went into a mental hospital, and my brother and I and my sisters had to support ourselves in the household, and I remember finding a book, and it was hidden in my mother's drawer. Later, as an adult, I find out what it is. It was a book she was reading, probably to help herself to try to get stronger. To me, it must have been dirty because it was hidden in her drawer there. So I looked at it, and the mere fact that she had hid it from me, I thought, I'm gonna. So I started looking, and I started reading. And the first thing I see in it that really turned me on was, I'm not talking about that kind of turn on, no pictures. The first thing I really found out, I think I was about 9, I loved the fact that this guy was saying, you don't have to do homework or study to get smarter. That was one of the things. He also said a basketball player doesn't have to shoot hoops, and you don't have to do certain things if you visualize it. And the book at the time was called Psycho-Cybernetics. Maxwell Maltz, a plastic surgeon, wrote it. Do you know why he wrote it? Weird. He's a plastic surgeon. You can't get more surface than that, right? He was just into making people prettier, but he noticed that when he fixed these girls' noses, they still were unhappy, and they still were not more popular, and they still did not have all the things they thought they would have. He realized it was because they were visualizing themselves the way they've always been, and they did not feel attractive. So he did a little experiment with people, and he took girls who came in for nose jobs, and instead of nose job, he coached me. And then he did something for the girls that had nose jobs. And he also coached me. He realized it had nothing to do with the nose. It had to do with their perception. Again, perceptionomics will change your life, but we still haven't gotten to manipulation. Again, I'm moving a little slower than I usually do. I'd like to be up here like Wally running around, but I can't. Not today. So, I want to tell you about my story. So I read that book, and I became very smart at a very young age with books and all that, because I digested them, and I listened to what people had to say, and I realized that I had to think about things, and they happened. I had to set goals, and they happen automatically sometimes. I'll give you an example of how setting a goal works. Just a really stupid little everyday life example. I had a big hole, sinkhole in my driveway, and I needed to find filled dirt. And I called around, and it was going to cost $800, $1,000 plus trucking fees. It was thousands of dollars to fill this. And I'm thinking, oh goodness, I need to get this filled. My driveway is useless. I'm driving to work one day. There's a big sign, a glorious sign on a pile of dirt in a field, and it says, free fill. Will transport. And I went up to that guy and I said, what an amazing coincidence. I need filter and had a sinkhole a few days ago. And now I see the sign because it's no coincidence. It's been up there for 2 years. Now, that dirt was there. I didn't see it because I didn't set it as a goal. So my body, my mind, my eyes were not programmed to see the dirt. And that's what happens when you set goals. And I know Les and all these guys know more about that than me, but I'm telling you, when you set a goal, magic things start to happen. But we still have to learn about, even when you get your goals, how you can manipulate people. But I want to tell you a little bit about myself. There was relaxed lending. There were more buyers than ever. And I owned a lot of real estate. And I qualified for my loans the old-fashioned way. I had money, and I had good deals, and millions of dollars in equity. But people got the idea, and I'm not saying it's good or bad, and I'm not a political animal, that everyone should own a home, even if it meant loaning them more money than the homes were. In fact, they were lending at 125% of home values. So that sparks more buyers. Honey, you don't have to put anybody in the house. In fact, we move in, we have money for improvement. That would be good if the improvements went into the house, but these guys bought trucks and everything else, went on vacations, and then the people who had homes already, they had equity. Why? Because higher home values. When you have more buyers, your home becomes more valuable. And I knew we were in trouble with higher home values when the home I was living in was appraised for a price I wouldn't pay for it, and I was living in it. But it was free money, equity. And remember this, I said that the wisdom between making money and not is knowing when to convert and knowing how to convert equity to cash flow to equity. I should have said one thing, unless the equity comes out of thin air. Then you have no appreciation for it. So people just cashed it right in. And then what happened? More money to spend. So more employment rate, higher wages. What could be better than that? These were the wonderful years of Bill Clinton. Not political, I'm serious. So then what happened? Well, here's what happened. Higher wages, higher prices. We had less spending. Business started cutting back. There were layoffs, unemployment, and recession. All because of perceptionomics. People had the wrong perception and they started spending less. If they let those homes go into foreclosure and not let it bother them, it didn't bother them. But some people will say, there's so many foreclosures. I'm not going to buy a home right now. I said, but why? It's just a bad time. Why? Well, you know, the lender's now in trouble. And I said, well, why? Don't make your decisions based on what everyone else is doing and based on what the so-called economy is doing. Have your own perception and work at it. And you can make a living, and a great living, in a bad recession, and in a bad economy and a good economy. Now add a catalyst to all of this. What's the catalyst? A catalyst are accelerators to a reaction. What was the catalyst? Oh my goodness. Loan defaults, the FDIC, bank failures, and no more lending. That's what happened. And when people saw that, for example, they would take a commercial piece of real estate that had nothing wrong with it, and people made every payment every month for 10 years. And they'd say, Mr. Martino, we know you made every payment every month for 10 years, but we can't renew your loan. Why? Because commercial loans, by the way, are like every 2 or 3 years. Why can't you renew a loan? Oh, because the FDIC says they're bad loans. Why are they bad? Because our bank has 80% real estate loans, and they don't want us to have 80%. They want us to get down to 40% real estate loans and 40% other loans, like business and cars. And so I said, mine was business, but real estate. So I said, okay. So I went out and tried to refinance, but you see what? My friends down the street were being told the same thing. Every real estate holder was told the same thing. So when we couldn't refinance, guess what else we did? Put it up for sale. But everyone's putting it up for sale. So what happens? Prices go down. Now, let me tell you what happened to banks. There's almost no bank that was shut down due to true internal failure. Almost none. You can look it up yourself. They would walk into a bank that was doing great one night and tell them you have to shed 40% of your loans and put them on the watch list the next day. Now, on a watch list, big investors don't take out CDs anymore, or they don't invest in your bank, and you have less money to lend. So you had bank failures. Then the FDIC said, oh my goodness, we're having so many bank failures that we may fail because we don't have enough to cover all the deposits. So they came up with an ingenious plan. Had they gone on the air and said, the FDIC is in trouble, we need money, there would have been a run on the banks and a depression, and the country would have been in disastrous conditions. So instead they said, the banks are in trouble. We need to bail them out. We need $600 billion to bail out banks, which, by the way, are in trouble because we said they were, who had less than 2% default rates. So what happens? They go and bail the banks out. But really, what was the money used for? The money was used to shore up the FDIC and to consolidate, close as many small banks as possible and consolidate them into bigger ones. I got caught in that. That is part of my story. So now you got a market, collect lower prices, defaults, predatory purchases, and that's me right there. Bankruptcy. So what do I do about it? Now I'm going to prognosticate. I'm going to read the signs, and I'm going to be smarter if I do real estate, providing my wife doesn't shoot me in my sleep if I even mention it, but prognosticate, I say for real estate and for the economy, look for unemployment, look at consumer confidence. And this is what I mean. When the unemployment rate, by the way, a perfect economy has what for unemployment? Do you know? About 4.5%. Okay? 4.5 to 5% is the best it's ever been. Oh, it has been artificially lower than that at times. But that's what it hovers around in a great economy. Then we were told that twice that, 8% ruined the country, or 9%. It did not ruin the country. Our perception of what was going on ruined the country. So when you look at unemployment, here's what I'm going to tell you. When you see unemployment rates, now the recession is still on, people are still telling you things are going bad. When you see it ticking down, and it gets to around 6%, you start looking for things to invest in because it's going to go down to 5, 4, and people are going to be very happy. When you see consumer confidence starting to rise just a little and unemployment rate starting to drop, it's your time to conversion to equity. Otherwise, keep your cash. But people do it the other way around. When it gets way down, when people are starting to go back to work, okay, and everything's buzzing, that's when they invest. You should invest just at the first sign of when it starts going down. When it starts going up again, it's a little early, unemployment. So when unemployment is on the rise, don't do anything. But as soon as, and we've already missed the mark because it's still time, but it's a little late. When as soon as it reaches the peak, it starts coming down a bit, that's when you make your move. Because if you wait until unemployment is at 4%, it's too late. Because as you see, what would happen is you would have the people already employed, prices going higher, and spending will be cut back, and you'll be caught. Now, I have a strategy, and I'm going to talk about manipulation. I'm going to finish up. Believe they've covered enough of that. Believe you can do it, first of all. Believe you deserve it, because so many people don't believe they can be wealthy. They make jokes about it. I walked out of a restaurant, and they pulled up my Ferrari, and a guy said, "Oh, that's my car." And I said, "Why are you joking about that, sir? That couldn't be your car." And he said, "What do you mean?" And I said, "That could be your car." I said, "Why do you think you cannot earn enough money to buy a car?" Remember, I said cash flow is great for me. I'm just saying that I wanted to give you an example of how people condition themselves. Set goals. We talked about that. You know what that means, and you know how it works with a pile of dirt. Then visualize your success. Again, this has gone over, and then act accordingly. That means each and every day, act, do something. But I have a little sneaky thing as far as when I say do something. Let me just, okay. Let me tell you, do something, meaning anything. I call it the sideshow. My sideshow was aviation. Had nothing to do with business, had nothing to do with anything except self-image. Tony Robbins calls it firewall, right? The firewall. That's his metaphor. That's his sideshow. My sideshow is learning how to fly an airplane, then learning how to fly a helicopter, then getting better and better at it. So when I'm in a business meeting, I swear, or I'm endeavoring to do something, I think back and I think, shoot, I can do this, I can do this, I can do this, I can do that, I bet you can. It's your sideshow that gives you fuel. So pick a sideshow, something that you're good at and you know and makes you feel great. And then you transfer that feeling to other things. It's nothing more than a sideshow. And I'm going to get to manipulation right now because I promised it to you. I'm done. You have to manipulate others, but I'm not going to tell you how because then you'd have my job. I want. No, and by the way, I'm not talking about a lose-lose or win-lose. Everyone can be winners, and I really do mean that. Okay, when I'm talking about, when I'm talking about manipulation, you must realize that everything in life, pastor to church congregation, us to God, God to us, man to woman, woman to man, us to children, children to us to our dog to us. Everything in life, and I'm not talking about phony, I'm just talking about the way it is. Everything is a transaction. Everything. Today, this is a transaction. I want to impart some entertainment and some information. What do I want in return? I like people to like me, that's one thing. I would like them to understand me, that's another thing. I would like them to maybe buy a book because that would help us be successful here and help you be successful. And maybe listen to Patrick about getting into a business. Everyone has something they want in a transaction. Everyone. And when people call me with a consumer problem, I always ask them one thing. What do they want? I got a phone call. This guy says you can do this, 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 and this, and this, and he needs me to help him. And what does he want? What does she want. When you can assess what other people want, you become a superstar. So the very first thing in your bag of tricks is to know everything's a transaction. Every conversation, everything that happens in your life is a transaction. Everything. So I am constantly saying to myself, even for my friends, it's not a negative thing. What do they want? But I'm asking it for a reason, so I know what to give. Because if you know what they want, then you know what to give. And to the extent you give them what they want, you become successful. That's what I do on radio. That's made my broadcasting career. It's not because I have some great voice or some great manner on the air. But here's what's important. What if what they want is not good and you're not willing to give it to them? What do you do then? Well, this is a transaction. So you either fill the desire or you change their desire. And the way you change someone's focus and desire is to draw them to something better. And then, when you both have congruent desires and goals, and you drew them there, you become the leader. And again, I am not talking about using my powers for evil. I'm talking about using them for good. Now, there are plenty of people who know how to do this and use it for bad, but that's the good thing about bad. You always find out. Always. And they don't sleep well. I don't care what they tell you. It's not success. So assess in every walk of life, even your children. You know, that helps me, especially girls, because they're con artists. It helps me. I'm talking about my daughters, you know. Hi, Daddy. Okay. Stop right there. Daddy, is your knee that sore? Can I help you? Okay. What am I thinking? What do you want? That's an obvious one. Okay. That's quite literally like taking candy from a baby. No, honey, you can't eat that now. Just because she was nice to me, she can't again. But what I'm telling you is, if you practice doing this, you're going to become a master manipulator. And when you know something is good for someone, and you transfer that focus to them, and they benefit from it, they will love you. A lot of people do that with religion, and a lot of people resent it. But they're doing it out of love. And that was the last part of my message. It has to be out of true love and affection. You cannot fake it. If you go into business to sell something for a profit, you will eventually fail unless you truly believe it will benefit someone. Success is short-lived without true affection and feeling for people. So,